There's a story, and it may have been it was online yesterday, but I think it didn't get to the Wall Street Journal till today, though, is the Peggy Noonan Wall Street Journal about the real President Obama. America has finally seen the real Obama. And I just thought it was an interesting read. Why was the first debate so toxic for the president? Because the one thing he couldn't do if he was going to win the election is to let all the pent-up resentment toward him erupt. Americans had gotten used to him as the president. Whatever his policy choices, whatever general direction he seemed to put in place, he was the president, a man who had gotten there through natural gifts and what all politicians need, good fortune. What he couldn't do was present himself when everyone was looking as smaller than you thought, petulant, put upon, above it all, full of himself. He couldn't afford to make himself look less impressive than the challenger in terms of command, grasp of facts, size. But that's what he did. And in some utterly new way, the president was revealed, exposed. All the people whose job it is to surround and explain him, to act as his buffers and protectors, they weren't there. It was him on the stage, alone with a competitor. He didn't have a teleprompter. And so his failure seemed to underscore the cliche that the prompter is a kind of umbilical cord for him, something that provides nourishment, the thing he needs to sound good. He is not by any means a stupid man, but he's become a boring one. He drones. He is predictable. It's never new. The teleprompter adds substance, or at least safety. Anyway, interesting look at things, mainly because it just shows that, once again, debates are consequential. And that is something that brings us to a discussion of what Alan Kelly has written about once you go to the plays for the presidency, if you will. Game of Blitz, final plays for the presidency. Alan Kelly, of course, is the CEO of and founder of Playmaker Systems. You can reach him at Playmaker Alan is where he tweets, and, of course, playmakersystems.com is the website. Alan Kelly joins us as he does each Friday. Welcome, sir.
Happy Friday, Tim.
Happy Friday indeed. So we saw three debates, and the first two, first one went to Mitt Romney by most accounts. Second one may have been a draw, probably went to the president. The third one probably going to the president. But I guess the question is, as we look at these debates, what did you finally think about the plays that were run? I mean, it was clear that President Obama responded after the first debate to change his strategy.
I liked a lot what you just read in that piece. That essentially what they're saying, at least as I look at it in terms of plays and counterplays, is that in debate number one, more than any of the others, Obama was really robbed of all his normal props. So his play selection, again, to use the analogy, was radically reduced. He had to stay within much tighter bounds. So he was stripped of all the accoutrements that he normally uses. And so, there's a big difference between an Obama talking about, a debate, I'm talking about on the economy, and Obama, yesterday out in the hustings in Ohio, or Obama, or that, and now the advertising that they're running, say, about Murdoch, which I think we'll talk about. Yeah. He likes to use all the strategies at his disposal, but in a debate, you get these things narrowed down, and you essentially get your arms tied behind your back, and you've got to present with a whole lot more authenticity and, frankly, honesty.
Before we get to the polls, to the Richard Murdoch comments, which came earlier this week in one of his debates, I want to talk about something you were writing about, fishy facts about the polls, the national polls that show Mitt Romney in the lead. A quick note from Jen Psaki, who is the campaign spokesperson on Air Force One the other day.
Any poll that shows us tied with women and with men in this country is not a poll that we are placing bets on in Vegas.
Okay, so... The polls that matter and the polls that don't matter. You say that that's a red herring. That's the kind of play that's being run sometimes.
Well, again, like you were saying a few minutes ago, it comes down at this point to really just, working the numbers. It becomes a question of winning the Electoral College and not the national appeal. It's almost amusing, depending on your politics, that Romney is associating himself very quickly with national sentiment, which is now saying there's more of it for him than there is for Obama, and which is a bit ironic if you think about Al Gore in 2000, who lost the Electoral College, but he won the national vote, per se, whatever that is. But that's still in all, while it might seem a little disingenuous, it's a valid play for the Romney campaign to run because it gives one pause, and it certainly, more than anything, helps to legitimize or bring credibility to their basic claim that, hey, we've got momentum, baby, and the other guys don't.
You're saying that politicians sometimes are disingenuous? How can you even begin to say something like that?
Such a sap.
You know what? It's funny because somebody asked me the question the other day. He said, well, suppose the Republicans, suppose we get to the point where Mitt Romney wins the popular vote but loses the Electoral College. Do you think Republicans will complain? I mean, in 2000, and I said, of course they will. This is for the win. This is not about, as people are so often, this is not tiddlywinks.
Well, I think you get the feeling that somebody will complain and all the way to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And I think that worries probably everybody.
Yeah. And of course, we're already seeing the scenarios play out about, well, what if it goes to the Congress and the House winds up making Mitt Romney the president and Joe Biden becomes the vice president because the Senate gets to vote on that. Although, frankly, I don't think that even Democrats will vote for Joe Biden. I mean, I don't think they'd want to have a Democratic vice president to share the blame for a Republican.
For every play, of course, it's run, there's always a counterplay. It's almost a bit like physics, for every reaction, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And so the reaction from Axelrod and company, Obama's advisors, was actually very, very simple and very restrained. Usually they do something more sophisticated, but this time they just ran that funny play, not named after an Italian car, called a Fiat. Just the declaration of information. All they really had to do to neutralize or to counter, the Romney self-flattery of national polling was to point to, let's say, a poll in Ohio, which is showing, again, the president starting to edge ahead, still within the margin of error, but still showing, something that Romney could not exactly claim as momentum. So it was a very nice point and counterpoint series that happened there.
Yeah, and this is the plays, and again, this is what Alan Kelly does. By the way, there is an application for this. Does that work on the new? What is the newest?
On the mini, the
iPad
tiny,
8 or whatever the hell. What is that thing called?
We don't know.
Oh, okay. The one that's made of aluminum instead of plastic.
Yeah, that's right. The Playcaller is the name of the app, and it currently runs on iPhone and iPad.
All right, very good. I want to go to Todd Akin because this is something that has not Todd Akin, but Richard Murdoch. Todd Akin is the one who said legitimate rape, and Richard Murdoch this week, debating in Indiana against his opponent, said that the words he used in the debate is that even when life begins in that horrible situation of rape, it is something that God intended to happen. Now, he did the next day meet with the press, and here's what he said.
What I've said here today, Raphael, is what I hoped to say last night and obviously didn't say very well, which is, I think life is precious. I do to the marrow of my bones. I think that God can see beauty in every life. But certainly I did not intend to suggest that God wants rape, that God pushes people to rape, that God wants to support or condone evil in any way, because that goes against the strongest base of my faith.
Okay. Alan Kelly, what's the play here?
Well, the first play that was run was in reaction to Murdoch, what the Obama campaign immediately did. Again, Axelrod and boys, they all came out and they ran a play called a screen, which is our word for associating something with something. They immediately said, "Oh, let's connect the dots." And again, this may be a bit disingenuous depending on your politics, but they said, that sounds an awful lot like Todd Akin, and that sounds an awful lot. That can also be thought to be sounding a lot like VP pick, VP nominee Paul Ryan.
So 3 degrees of separation
yes,
gets you to the presidency.
What is the transitive property in math that I learned in junior high school or something like that? If A equals B and B equals C, and so they put that all together in a very, very fast response ad that said that essentially allowed them to breathe life, back into their hatched, Warren women, which is something they absolutely probably need and want to do, because that's where they can rob votes from Romney over to Obama's side. That was a fairly effective. It was a combination of a screenplay and a label play, which led then to what the clip you just heard by Murdoch, which was his counter. That was clearly really just a simple a recast where he's saying, actually, it was like this. I think his explanation was more elegant than Todd Akin. He wasn't trying to flout science, and take.
He was trying to explain what he considered life to be, and the fact that God is embracing of all life, whether it's caused by a tragedy or something that's intentional, and that was his point, which as he said, was much more elegantly expressed.
He wasn't trying to do something that would offend anyone who'd taken high school biology.
Exactly.
Well, but it was just enough for the Obama campaign to tie him him to Aiken and then again in transitive property use style to tie Ryan to all of that. Now, the problem I've got with that play and sort of the problem that I'm seeing here in general, before we get to our third and final fun play, was that, clearly Obama is more facile. He's the better playmaker, if to coin that phrase. He understands influence strategy. He goes across the spectrum. He's got this broader footprint that we can track. We can just show you he's got a broader playbook, to use all those analogies. But the thing about it is that he is becoming, in my view, detectable for his play calling. Mm-hmm. And that is, he's becoming almost visibly disingenuous rather than invisibly disingenuous. And on the other side, so
when you hear the
coin,
same thing day after day after day, and after a while you realize this is not him being clever, this is him being a practiced comedian on the road, or whatever you want to.
And it's being too clever.
But I wonder if that comes across to the average voter, or is that just somebody who follows it as closely as we do?
Well, who knows? And, we are very close to it. There's no doubt. But I do think the average voter who is maybe not quite so tuned in, everyone has basic sensibilities. And I think what you may be starting to see, and while Romney, for instance, has this very narrow footprint, he's not nearly as facile or as clever. He is, by contrast to Obama, starting to look actually authentic. Mm-hmm. And he is, I think most people would argue, proved himself to be a plausible alternative, as Julie Mason has pointed out so many times. And this, I think, is one of the reasons why he really does have that momentum.
All right, let's get to this last part. By the way, before we do, I just want to mention, I think the transitive property, wasn't that like 2 + 1 = 3 and 1 + 2 = 3?
It just might be, Tim.
Okay, anyway, not important. This is important, though. This is important.
President Obama is the least transparent president in the history of this country. There's never been anything like it. We know very little about our president.
Of course, he made the big deal the other day. I'll give $5 million to charity if you show us your college transcripts. What's the play on that?
It's very interesting. To know Mr. Trump, you have to say he's running his signature play, which is a peacock. And I think that's self-evident why we call that play the play. He is always coming up with things that are kind of out of left field. This has some resonance, but still in all, he's just strutting. He's trying to put his name, keep his name in the game, and this is sort of his probably last expiring act for the 2012 cycle. But he might say, it wasn't a peacock, it was a challenge. And that's a play, a pressing play to say, come on, let's do something here. But I think, in fact, what you probably have to say is that the play was a bait. He was trying to bait the president to respond to him on something that the president shouldn't respond to. That's what a bait is, when you try to invite someone to cross a line that they might best advisedly not cross.
Mm-hmm. What I love is what the president's response was, this play.
What's this thing with Trump and you? It's like me and Letterman. What has he got against you here? I don't get it.
This all dates back to when we were growing up together in Kenya.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was a bit of that. It was a Trump. That's the play, right? A Trump.
Yeah, this is the hard thing to explain, I suppose. As it happens, Donald has really messed up my system this year by entering the fray here. We have...
It's the outlier that always destroys the theories, as you know.
Well, in our system, we would argue that there are 24 irreducibly unique stratagems of influence. We think there are 24, not more, not less, and that may change over time. But we try to come up with names. We have to name them. You have to name galuminium something, so you call it galuminium. I guess. So the idea we liked was, what bridge players do when they throw down a card that can fundamentally reverse competitive position, in some sort of match. So we call that play a trump. What's ironic is that play, whatever you want to name it, is really Obama's signature play. It has been throughout this campaign. He's very, very good at running at a problem rather than the usual political instinct of corporations or candidates to run away from it. So what he did, just like he responds to Obamacare saying, hey, I like Obamacare, I'm Obama and I care, this time he went straight at it. Now, you might think, oh, actually his play was all about humor, but humor is merely a variable. That's just a way that you tweak, the actual strategy. So what he was doing is he was running straight at the problem, and he was using humor artfully, on Jay Leno, to make a very, very funny point.
It's good stuff. Playmakersystems.com. Check it out. Alan Kelly, CEO and founder. We'll talk one more time before the election. Alan, talk to you next week.
I can't wait.